Good morning, everyone. My name is Martin P. Cox. I'm a lifelong Plainfield resident, proud Plainfield High School alumnus, and alumnus of Rutgers, the State University, PHS class of '79, and Rutgers University, 1983. I've been a collector and a historian for my entire life, and our family has resided in Plainfield since the 1800s.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Tristan M. Cox. I'm the K-12 Social Studies Supervisor in the Plainfield Public School District. Like my father, born and raised in Plainfield. I graduated, I went to Woodland, which no longer exists, Woodland Elementary School. I went to Maxon Middle School and Plainfield High School and graduated in 2005 and went to Rutgers University right after, stayed close to home, and graduated Rutgers in 2010 and with a degree in social studies education, and actually came back to teach in Plainfield. I first started at the Queen City Academy Charter School, and I worked there for 2 years, and then I came over to the public schools teaching at the high school, and I stayed in the classroom for 12 years, and I was recently hired as the K-12 Social Studies Supervisor. So I provide curriculum updates, directions, trainings, enrichment programs for students, et cetera, any and everything really to drive the district forward in a positive light, put on programs such as this one today. But we both care deeply about Plainfield, the students, the community members, et cetera. And I think, one of my fondest memories, I'll transition with this, but one of my fondest memories was growing up on Putnam Avenue on the east end of town in my grandparents' house. And it just kind of is like reminiscent of something you see in a movie where, it was community-based, like our neighbors were also my parents, my family. I considered them family. They took care of us, and just a lot of good memories. So, that's kind of like just an introduction to my experience with Plainfield. So we asked the question, what has the Black experience in Plainfield, New Jersey been? That's the question that is going to guide our practice for this presentation, or kind of gear you guys up. And to answer that, we're going to go through the slides, but it's really been an interesting journey for African-American people in Plainfield. We're going to begin focusing on youth and open you guys up with a quote, "To be young, gifted, and Black" by Nina Simone.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let us resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, "Eat in the kitchen," then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. I too sing America.
The Plainfield Public Schools began in 1846 by an act of the New Jersey State Legislature to allow tax dollars to be used to fund education. Prior to that in New Jersey, taxpayers paid in their municipalities $1 per year in average of tuition per student, thereby making those schools semi-private schools, not in fact public schools. In 1889, the Plainfield Public Schools achieved, which may be a New Jersey first, with the first African-American female graduate. Her name was Maud Mitchell. At the time, Plainfield High School was known as City High School. In 1890, the first African-American male graduate of Plainfield High School was Preston White.
And in 1904, Anna Broadnax was the first African-American valedictorian of Plainfield High School. And in 1944, Gloria Carpenter was appointed as the first African-American teacher in the history of the Plainfield public school system.
In 1952, Joe Black, who was a Plainfield High School alumnus, became the first African-American to win Rookie of the Year in Major League Baseball nationally. In 1952, he was the first African-American also to pitch in a World Series baseball game. Joe Black would go on to become the first African-American executive at a Fortune 500 company chock full of nuts. In 1953, Henry Foster graduated from Plainfield High School. He was an All-American in track. He matriculated to Butler University, where he became the first African-American to play on the basketball team at Butler University.
Milt Campbell was known as the world's greatest athlete. He competed in a decathlon, which is 10 events. He's the first African-American decathlon champion. In 1956, he won gold medal in the decathlon. And as a senior in high school, he won the silver medal in the decathlon. And I just want to note, well, for those who don't know, the decathlon is an Olympic event. So I think, you know, what's astonishing about his athletic prowess and ability is that he was a high school student competing in the Olympics. You know, he's also a world record holder in the high hurdles. Anything else you want to include about Milt? For those who also don't know, we have a park in town named on the east end of town near Terrell Road, named after Milt Campbell.
Previously, that park was called Track 19.
And if you've ever, these are some photos of Milt. He was also a very outstanding football player, as you can see in the top right photo. But these are some of the events that he ran. And, you know, a quote that he lived by is good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best.
Milt led the state of New Jersey in scoring as a high school senior for the Plainfield High School Cardinals. He ultimately got drafted by the Cleveland Browns. It was not common for African Americans in the 50s to play in the NFL. So there was a quota, and very few players were on each team that were African American. But Milt actually roomed with Jim Brown. Ultimately, he went to Canada and had an extensive career in the Canadian Football League. It should also be noted that when Milt Campbell went to the Olympics, everyone believed that Rayford Johnson would in fact win the gold medal. Rayford Johnson won the silver medal, and Milt was considered the underdog, which is a word that could have been used throughout his life with a lot of the things that he accomplished. This slide is a photo of my brother Timmy's birthday party. And you may say, why is Martin putting a picture of his birthday party? If you will look at the photo, you will see that the birthday is integrated. And in 1964, it was very rare for there to be integrated parties in most places in America, let alone in Plainfield. So the Courier News did a whole full-page expose on our neighborhood, which was integrated, and did many things across racial lines. That's why this photo appears in our presentation today. Also in that photo are members of the Crawley family and the Knowlton family.
So in 1954, Marshall Brown was appointed as the first African-American male teacher / coach in history of the Plainfield Public School System. He was also the first African-American high school head coach in New Jersey history. He became the first African-American college head coach hired in New Jersey history as well.
Marshall Brown was also known for loaning his vehicle, and he really served as a conduit for many great African-American athletes and individuals who weren't athletes to go to HBCUs. So he would loan his car and give money, because credit cards were not common in our community then. And he would give his car for individuals to go on their recruiting visits to the individual colleges. So Marshall Brown, who came out of the Virginia school system, and he was the head of athletics in the Virginia, Black African-American athletics in Virginia, actually helped well over 300 students to ultimately earn their college degrees. He was a Plainfield legend.
So we want to highlight transition or a shift in Plainfield. And we want to start that process by, showing you guys, some photos from a yearbook. So this is a Plainfield High School yearbook. All right, it's from 1955. So now we're going to transition. If you look at this photo, this is outside of what we today currently call the old building. It's the first high school that was built, known as Plainfield High School, but it's the old building. And if you look at the demographics of the people in the photo, majority, is Caucasian, right? And, you maybe have, one here, two, maybe a handful of African-American people. This is 1955. This is Plainfield in 1955. Same thing here. It's another photo. You see predominantly Caucasian people, a sprinkle or a handful of African-American people in this photo. Another photo that permeates that point. And I think it's also important to note what the demographics were of the administration. If you look at the superintendent of schools, the principal, guidance department, administrative assistant, down to the teachers, you have predominantly Caucasian people that were essentially running the school system at that time. And soon after, in the 1960s, you had social unrest. And it wasn't just in Plainfield, you had it in Detroit, you had it in Newark, you had it in California, all these different places where this social unrest was erupting. And Plainfield was one of those places where this social unrest took place.
And the social unrest was based on lack of employment opportunities, educational opportunities, lack of fair quality, affordable housing. Those things ultimately had a boiling point.
What's the situation right now in Plainfield, in the West End, in the affected area?
As I understand the situation, it's tense inside the community, and it's within the perimeter, as explained to you by Commissioner Ildesacker, and it's rather tense outside.
And that was just a gentleman named Arthur Seals. I found this online, but it is a real video of him talking about the social unrest that was brewing in town. You want to share the experience about with our family coming over?
So ultimately, Plainfield had National Guards, as you can see, with tanks, with guns drawn, primarily in the West End of Plainfield, okay? For many families, this caused the relatives to move into families with their families, African-American families, in other parts of town. It just was not a safe environment. From a perspective of the Cox family, there were 7 children in our parents, which were 9. We had one of our families move in, my father's brother and his family. So that was obviously my uncle, our uncle, moved in with, stayed with us. So our family went from 9 people, 10 people actually, to 17 people staying in our home during these very difficult and volatile times in the history of our community and the country.
And just to elaborate on this point a little bit further, these events were known as race riots. Unfortunately, one person lost their life as a police officer. He was trying to disperse a crowd, and he was killed. After this social unrest, these race riots, these events that didn't just happen in Plainfield, you had what is known as white flight, and the demographics of the town changed after this, and we'll show you guys some photos that kind of highlight that point. But there was a very swift a shift in in the demographics. But we want to get into a few other points as well that in terms of a historical timeline sense. So in 1968, Houston Robinson was hired and taught African-American history in the Plainfield Public Schools, and specifically in the social studies department. I wasn't fortunate enough to have him as a teacher. I was fortunate enough to have some teachers that came after him in terms of his lineage in the social studies department. But I've always heard wonderful stories about all of the students that he influenced by way of African-American history, and really just giving African-American students that perspective of this is our very rich history that often sometimes isn't shared in the majority of classrooms. So he was a person that really kind of speak to this Afrocentric, pro-Black and providing students with the context of what it's like to be African-American in Plainfield and what it's like to be African-American in this country. Is there anything else you want to add about Mr. Robinson? So in 1969, and this obviously stemmed from the social unrest. First, let me just give you guys some context on this primary source document. So I actually got these photos from one of our teachers, Mr. Plummer, last year. This is The Voice, and it was a newspaper that was specifically created to report African-American news in Plainfield. And if you look at the date, it's March 8th, 1969. And students essentially revolted. They shut the school down and they came up with some demands. This is in the old building, right? And they essentially shut down the auditorium in the old building, right? And they demanded that, so better services for African-American students. They demanded this African-American history course. And they basically just wanted the school community and school feel for African-American students at Plainfield they wanted to be better served. And
it should also be noted that we're talking about the Black experience in Plainfield, New Jersey. But at that same time, Rutgers University had its largest ever African-American class university-wide, and it was only 200 students. And Rutgers University and Plainfield and places across the country mirrored the same type of student demands through organization, key phrase, by organizing and letting the powers that be know what was necessary, change was brought about. It was not easy change, but change was brought about.
And I think it's important to note, I've shared this story with my students when I was in the classroom. And I think it's just important to note that what it takes for students or young children to bring about change. These students weren't violent. They made a statement by closing down the auditorium and peacefully requesting these demands, and how it brought about positive change with the African American history course and things of that nature. So transitioning, we're trying to give you guys a historical timeline, but Marion Lee Johnson, she's a mathematician. It should be noted that Marion Lee Johnson did not grow up in Plainfield. However, she was a Plainfield resident, all right, but she is a part of the movie. She's a part of the movie and the work for the film Hidden Figures, and the work that it took to make Apollo 11 happen. So she's a very prominent person, African-American woman who resided in Plainfield, who is extremely popular and important. And in 1969, the first African-American to be appointed as the superintendent of the Plainfield Public School System is Dr. Russell Carpenter. And as you can see, like we previously stated, this is another excerpt from the newspaper, The Voice. And this article is from December 13th, 1969.
It should be noted that he was one of the few African Americans to hold the position of superintendent anywhere in the state of New Jersey. Plainfield has had an impact upon the world. Often things that happen in Plainfield happen first for African Americans anywhere. He also became the first Black man to become a principal, an assistant superintendent, and the acting superintendent. So, and he was Gloria Carpenter's brother.
So again, guys, we started with the social unrest, and we showed you guys some photos from the 1955 yearbook, and what the majority of students were, and then we gave you guys some figures in there in terms of timeline. But if you look at this, says Plainfield Public Schools, racial distribution, percent of Negro by school, and this is in 71, and you see the numbers are increased. So 222 at Barlow, Cedarbrook, Maxon, Hubbard, and high school. We'll just take a second and just look at this. And then also if you look all the way to the right, you see the percentages have almost completely shifted. And that switch to predominantly African American.
It is believed that in Plainfield, from my research, that switch began really with the relocation of Mack Motors from South 2nd Street in Plainfield, which provided 4,000 above average wage jobs. They were considered middle-class jobs. They relocated to Maryland. It's believed, some people would say to you that they relocated because they saw the shift in the community. I believe they relocated because you really had back then the suburbs giving tax incentives for companies to relocate with non-unionized labor, often with newer housing, newer schools, newer infrastructure, large lots and plots of land to relocate their businesses. But when you took those 4,000 jobs out of the community in approximately 1958, you started the downward economic spiral, okay? It was already difficult and nearly impossible for African Americans to receive an opportunity at this point in time in the late 50s in the Plainfield area. You took those jobs away, and the remaining individuals, still primarily economic opportunities, still went to Caucasians. So African Americans were in a tough spot, and in less than a decade, the demographics of the school district completely flipped.
And so my dad, he spoke briefly about collecting, Plainfield memorabilia, archives, photos, signs. He's done extensive work. If you go into the back of the Plainfield High School and you walk down the hallway and you look to your right, in between the doors to enter the gym, he's done extensive work with plaques and insignia about Plainfield history in terms of athletics and things. And these are all, pieces of materials that people have donated to him. Maybe, if a relative passed away, but their children, they've moved on to move to other places. They don't have anything to do with this insignia. So they oftentimes give it to my father, And then my father also works with the Plainfield Public Library to build archives of yearbooks and things of that matter, right?
So the yearbooks, I donated my first yearbook in 1978. I may not be the largest donor of yearbooks, but I'm certainly in the top two. And we've developed in partnership with the Plainfield Public Library local history department in their climate controlled room. So these books will be around long after we're all gone. A pretty extensive collection of Plainfield High School yearbooks. Should be noted that some of the plaques, which we call the Plainfield High School entrance of alumni, athletic, and academic achievement. So there's academic plaques up there. There are the plaques that used to be outside of the old auditorium in the old building, which at one point in time, and this is not an accusation, just a statement, I'm always around. So I've been able to save a lot of things from the dumpster, from just being thrown out, discarded. So those things now reside in the hallway from the beginning of by the gym to the end of the gym. There's placards, wooden, that we had restored several years ago with the same gold leaf. And those placards tell you about the athletics and the athletes of the 40s and 50s. And I should note that there's a plaque about girls' athletics, okay? Most people think in this country and some in this community that girls' athletics began with Title IX in 1973, and it was a slow process to build teams up to where they are today. But Plainfield actually had girls' teams in the 1920s. Now, they didn't compete far and wide, so South Plainfield didn't exist, but they did compete against North Plainfield, okay? And some of that's in the yearbook, some of that's in old articles of the Courier News, the Entree newspaper, and in the minds of some people who are still the children or grandchildren, and the stories have been handed down. Plainfield has a phenomenal oral history. Maybe one day there could be a grant and someone can begin to record the history, because many people have passed on that if we don't record this history, we're going to lose it.
So if you can see, and just kind of think back to the photos that we shared from the 1955 yearbook. This is a photo from 1976. And you see the demographics of the students has completely shifted. As you see, it's predominantly African-American. If you look at, I look at this and I think about how they dress, for me, it looks a little bit different, but it's just something that is kind of excites me as a historian, is to see, the afros and, the flares and the shirts and, the style of clothing. But again, these are, the demographics of shift. These are photos from the 1976 library. You see the students are predominantly African-American. And so Dr. Everett C. Lattimore was actually the first African-American elected to the Union County Board of Chosen Freeholders. He's the first African-American elected as a first ward councilman. And in 1980, he was elected as the first African-American mayor in Plainfield, New Jersey. And in 1983, he stepped down as mayor to be the superintendent of the, Plainfield Public Schools. And
that was because his dual office holding the superintendency and the mayor violated the Sunshine Law, and it was challenged. And at the time, the compensation to be mayor was minimal, and you could not support a family on that minimal compensation, wages, and it was more beneficial to himself and his family, obviously, to remain in his full-time job as superintendent of the Plainfield Public Schools.
And Richard Nesblett was the first African-American appointed to serve on the Plainfield Board of Education in the history of the Plainfield Public School System. Mr. Nesblett also became the first African-American to serve on any Board of Education in the state of New Jersey.
And it should be noted, as a former Board of Ed member, which I am, and I served for 9 years, that at that point in time, the mayor would appoint, with the advice and consent of the city council, the members of the Board of Ed. So it was not an elected Board of Ed at that point in time in the history of the Plainfield Public Schools.
And it's important to note, this isn't a a conversation about politics, but it's important to note that the reason why, it's significant to have African-American, or the first African-American appointed on the Board of Education, is because political figures are charged with representing and making decisions that are based on the population of people that they represent. So, him being an African-American, being on the Board of Education, now serving the school system that is predominantly African-American, that's a significant point.
Tracey Bennett in 1986 became the first African-American female certified tax assessor in the state of New Jersey. She held that position as the tax assessor in the city of Plainfield from 1988 until 2021. I'm proud to say that Tracey was a classmate of mine from PHS. So she's a PHS alumnus, and we wish Tracey well in her retirement.
Nima Warfield, in 1994, he's the first African-American to receive the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship ever from an HBCU. The Rhodes Scholarship is the oldest, first awarded in 1902, and perhaps most prestigious international scholarship program, enabling outstanding young people from around the world to study at the University of Oxford.
Jucca's Colonial Funeral Home on West 4th Street in Plainfield is the oldest continuously operated African-American business in the city of Plainfield.
Cecil Allen was the first African-American fire chief to be appointed in Plainfield, New Jersey. Chief Allen served the fire department for 39 years, and the Plainfield Fire Department was founded in 1827.
It should be noted that Plainfield was one of the first paid fire departments in this part of the state of New Jersey, because as a city, it's impossible to rely on volunteer firefighters. If any of you have followed the plight of emergency care in Plainfield, New Jersey, and the rescue squad 10, 15 years ago, you realize that it's almost impossible for volunteers to serve a community, even a town or a village or a township. Because of the needs of the community, you need full-time personnel to serve. And the Plainfield Fire Department has a long and extensive history, which is coming up on its 200th anniversary.
So now we want to transition into speaking about entertainment, people, African-American people who, served the community, grew up in the community, lived in the community, taught in the community, who worked in the entertainment sector.
George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelics, grew out of Plainfield, came out of Plainfield, New Jersey. They used to be in a barbershop, and they went on to worldwide acclaim.
And so another point I want to add, my older brother, Cameron Cox, and I are members of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. George Clinton created a song, produced a song, Atomic Dog, and that's a song that we have unofficially used as our, fraternity song. And we just recently initiated George Clinton because of the song and because of the work that he's done for us. We initiated him into the fraternity a few years ago. So that's, something cool to note. So, sorry guys. This is a painting from Alonzo Adams. Alonzo Adams is from Plainfield and lived in Plainfield, went on to Rutgers University, and is a world-renowned painter. I follow him on Facebook and see some of the work that he does, and it's just interesting. I always see him posting photos with famous athletes or famous people on the news that have bought and done his work. And he actually just recently did a show that culminated, his artwork for over 30 years, and it was in Inglewood, I think a few months ago. If you look at this photo, right here in the denim shirt, this is Alonzo Adams. This is one of his paintings. And then Tracey
Morgan.
Tracey Morgan, comedian Tracey, actor, comedian Tracey Morgan. So a lot of people have, purchased his work, which is amazing.
Soprano, 1, 2, 3, and you just trust. I grew up in First Baptist Church in Nutley, which was the first church to introduce the live gospel recording. So I grew up with gospel greats like the Reverend James Cleveland and Reverend Lawrence Roberts and anybody who was who's who in gospel, I grew up listening to. So that style is rooted in me. Even though I enjoy contemporary music, I teach music, I like all of it, that style seems to be rooted in me. And that's what comes out when I do.
It should be noted that Stephanie Menedy was a longtime educator in the Plainfield Public Schools. She's a member of the Plainfield High School Alumni Association Hall of Fame as a non-alumnus staff member inductee. And while she was still employed with the Plainfield Public Schools, she actually won a Grammy for their rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, which featured Queen Latifah. So Stephanie Menedy is world renowned for her musical accomplishments.
Before we give credit to where the information has come from, I just wanted to include that there's so many people from Plainfield. We couldn't condense this to one presentation, but there's so many names that go unheard of or unspoken of that have worked tirelessly to contribute to the African American experience. For me personally, I think about all the wonderful teachers that I had that you'll never hear about, that worked in this community for years to promote African American excellence. So, even though we conducted this presentation, obviously we kept it to one presentation, which isn't extremely lengthy. There's so many people in this community and the history of this community that work tirelessly to promote African American excellence. Like I just think about my grandmother, Veronica Cox. She worked at the South 2nd Street Youth Center for years. And she isn't someone that, outside of our family that you would know and or consider a famous Plainfield person who is talked about and remembered. But she worked tirelessly for the Plainfield community and specifically the African American youth.
Tristan touched on a valuable point. And I'm going to expand upon that a little. The Black experience in Plainfield has included every household, certainly the African-American households, the Caucasian households, the people of different faiths and religions, but it would not also be possible without the great organizations, the Black churches, the Black businesses, the Black fraternal organizations, too numerous to mention. The individuals who open their homes to people. There are people in Plainfield, African Americans in Plainfield, who raised what we would call a foster child today without government help, financial support, or resources. Some of those individuals raised 14 or 15 kids over a 30-year period with no acknowledgement, okay? You can't, my learning curve to the Black experience is certainly being born as an African American, but also going to a Black barbershop, having a Black doctor, Dr. Archer, as a child, going to Frank Coit's shoe shop, which was an African American cobbler, okay, going to Black restaurants, going to Jack Wiley's clothing store, African American owned, having a Black photographer, seeing Black home ownership. Okay, those are the sort of things that made the Plainfield Black experience. Tristan and I are only sharing a small segment, and we've already committed, if the library and the Drake House needs us to come back based on your public input, to come back and expand upon this further. We could not get everyone, as Tristan said, into this very short one-time presentation. But a lot of this information has come out of these sources over the last couple of years. Certainly the book, Plainfield 300, which should be redone by a group of people. The Courier News, the Plainfield High School Alumni Association, the Plainfield High School Milestone Yearbooks, the Plainfield Public Library Local History Department, the Star Ledger, Thirst for Knowledge, the Voice newspaper, let me also tell you that so much Black history is preserved in funeral programs, which I'm starting to donate to the library now because I have an extensive collection because I went to funerals all the time prior to the pandemic. But if you have in your family, in your community, in your church, you should keep a scrapbook, preserved in plastic or something better than gluing it to a book. Old funeral programs. There is so much history in old funeral programs. And then just being around, being a part of model cities or CAP or Camp Tamanin, which was a summer camp we used to go away to, or the teen centers, or South 2nd Street Youth Center, or the Neighborhood House, or the Summer Playgrounds program. Just being a part, or the YMCA and the YWCA, both of which unfortunately are no longer here. So just all of those different places are great resources, and collectively, we all need to record the histories of the individuals who served in those programs before they transition to eternity.
Yeah, and I just want to, before we transition to questions and answers, if I had to answer our question of what was the Black experience in Plainfield, I would make a bold statement and I would say excellence. You know, as for as many negative stories as you hear about Plainfield, I could give you, I don't know, 50 positive ones. You know, I just think about, again, someone who goes unnamed, but a gentleman who was a student at Plainfield High School 2 years old. He's 2 years older than me, Richard Stewart. You know, he was a track athlete. He was amazing. He went on, he got a scholarship to go to Princeton University. And not only was he a track athlete, but he was an outstanding and excellent student. And I think that there's so many stories like Richard Stewart that you won't ever hear about. But I think of the word excellence, and I think, and I'm proud to be from Plainfield. I love my town, and you know, I love preserving its history and doing and helping my father and assisting with some of the work that he's done.
So I'd like to add to what Tristan said, and then we'll transition to Q&A. If you think of Leslie Anderson, the only African-American female to run an economic development authority in the country, Plainfield raised, Plainfield educated, excellence. There is no other word, excellence. So we do look forward to a future program, and we're going to take some questions from Sarah and Nancy.